Welcome to the January 9th Instructional Committee meeting, the first one of the year. And I'd like to introduce everyone to our new Instructional Committee people. We have Alex Dubois. I did it. I knew. I just asked you too.
We're getting off.
Sorry about
French
that.
on you.
Yes. Barb Higgins, Sarah Sadowski, and myself, Brenda Hastings. So that will be your Instructional Committee for the coming year, and we're excited to see what is going to be presented to us this year. We've got a very full agenda today, so we're going to start with an EduClimber presentation from Chris Demers and Kim, Assistant Superintendent Kim Yarlott, to teach us what we're going to be.
From way down here.
Way, you are way down there.
Sorry, won't catch what we have, so that's a good thing.
There. I'm on mic 4. You're on mic 7. All right. Sorry, you
That's
speak
okay.
first.
All right, I'll get to a little introduction. So what we wanted to do, I'm wondering if this, can you hear me? Does this feel like it's working?
I can hear you.
I know, Chris. Well, I'll just talk as though it's working. What I wanted to do and share with the instructional committee is how it is that we collect student performance data, what are those sort of fields that we collect, and how we use that data to inform our instruction. Oftentimes the board will hear about our big data points, the iReady testing, the SAS testing, the SAT testing scores, sort of those big accountability universal data pieces that we provide presentations for. But what I wanted to show you a little bit about tonight was what are we doing behind the scenes with the testing day-to-day information that we get. That's a little bit more formative based, and we're collecting data on student attendance, when students have interventions in different programs, how often they attend. We're collecting data on sort of those small points along the way. And so years ago, there was something called Performance Plus with the state, and it was a platform that was free to all school districts, and it's where you could do all of this tracking. In 2022, I believe, that went away, and schools were left sort of scrambling to find what they're going to use as a tool to collect, as a platform basically, to collect student performance data, having Performance Plus being taken away. So we adopted a program called EduClimber, and that basically is our data platform. And I wanted to have you see not only the platform, but how we use it to determine student performance and to make changes, instructional changes accordingly. So Chris Demers is our guru, along with Tom Crumrine. They can understand the platform behind the scenes, so they're very good at that. They're very good at getting the fields up and going. And then, in particular, in Tom's role, he's very good at using it in the multi-tiered systems for supports with the Tier 2 teams at each of the schools. So what he'll do is he'll pull up the EduClimber data with a group of teachers and administrators, and they'll make decisions about students together as a team. So he can't be here tonight, but Chris and I are going to be here to answer questions. So,
can you just remind us what year you guys started EduClimber?
it was 2023.
I think, we're in our third year.
Yeah, we researched programs in 22 for the year, and then landed on EduClimber in 23.
We had used, thanks, Kim. We had used Performance Plus for probably, gosh, Brenda, this goes back to when you were teaching third grade. I would say at least 15 years before that. And it was provided by the state. It was basically a big giant warehouse for lots of data. And it had other functions and other purposes as well, but we really only used it as like a clearinghouse for data. When the state canceled that contract, we had to find this, or had to find something. We found this. We really have grown into our use of this tool in ways that exceed what we used to do with Performance Plus. We are still growing, and there are some areas that we're still working on getting better at. But I'm going to give you just sort of a flyover of what's there. give you some ideas as to how we're using it for just a few minutes. So I'm going to ask you to sort of imagine you're going to wear 4 hats for this flyover, the 4 that you see on the screen, starting with being a classroom teacher. How might a classroom teacher use this? Then we'll shift to an interventionist who's providing support to a student or to a small group of students. Then sort of zoom out to maybe a larger team that's looking, as Kim mentioned, like an MTSS team at, say, the high school, for example, how that team might use this tool. And then lastly, how an administrator would use this as well. There are lots of other things that I'm not going to show you, but I just want to sort of give you a taste. It's like you're going to the buffet, trying a few different things as to what can be done with this. I'm not expecting you to be experts at this after 12 minutes, but I just want you to get a sense of what's there. I also want you to know that you're not going to see anything in terms of kid data here. I mean, it is all real data, but no names attached because I'm in super secret spy mode right now so that you don't see anything. You don't need to worry about seeing anything you shouldn't see. So starting with a classroom teacher, for example, we might begin by having a student having a teacher just look up a student as if she wants to get to know this student prior to the start of the school year. And so, and I'm going to try to make this a little bit bigger. We call this, well, Tom calls this sort of the baseball card view. If you can imagine, a baseball card has a nice picture on the front, but then a lot of information on the back. And so just to give you an idea of what some of the information that's really right at the hands of anybody who has access, which is pretty much everybody in the district, teachers, administrators, school counselors, nurses, everybody's got a hand in this. They've got a lot of stuff right at their fingertips that they can look into in terms of what's going on with this student. Starting with, for example, what is attendance looking like for this student? And so a lot of what you see on the screen is clickable. So we could look and see what's going on with this student, what's happened with this student from, say, last year to this year in terms of his or her rate. This is a really dramatic slide, but keep in mind this is really going from 96% to 94%, so it's a little more dramatic than it needs to be. But we could start to look and say, all right, what's the story of this student's attendance over the course of this year? And starting in August, when we literally had like 3 days, I would expect 100% would be okay. But you can see that the story beyond that has started to shift. And he's been sort of climbing out of where the student bottomed out at 90% attendance rate all the way up to working toward December where the students showed up every day. So these are the kinds of things that anybody could monitor in terms of what's going on with students. We've got a lot of data in terms of literacy scores that live here. We've got math scores that live here. And we also have the ability, now that we've been living in this for a few years, well, I'll say 2+ years, we can shift back to 2024-25, and now I can see what did the students' data look like last year. Color tends to mean a lot, so we're looking, for example, right now, all of these tiles basically reflect what went on with this student last year in math. Every tile is a question. How did that student do on that particular question? We found that this was too much information for teachers to make sense of, and so we have scaled that way back. For example, this year, now I'm looking in sort of these broader categories of how are students doing on multiplication, how are students doing on division, things that make a little bit more sense without having to look question by question. So we continue to sort of evolve how we're using this tool to make it most useful for all of the users. Barb?
So if I were a teacher and I had a big interest in a student, and I click on this now, do I have the chance to go question by question? Is that still accessible for me? If I wanted to go and say, all right, I'm going to have this kid in math, I want to know where they failed.
Not here,
Okay.
but I could go to iReady, where a lot of that lives, and do that there. So it felt like here was like too much, too deep for that.
Yeah, this would be a sort of a first look for everybody.
Exactly, right. Start with like a 20,000-foot view,
Yeah.
and then we've got other tools that we can use to sort of drill in to that level. But we just didn't, we were also thinking about, for example, special educators gave us some pretty specific feedback and said, all right, I can't make sense of all this information
Right.
when I'm trying to find, what to do for a student, what works best for that kiddo. Give us, less is more in this case. And so.
As you go along with the student, then you want more.
Exactly.
More,
Right.
big bowl of stuff.
Right. Now, you can imagine this story moving forward. We've got 2 years of data here. We're looking at current data here for this particular year. As the student moves on to next year, that continues to build over time, and so future teachers have more to look at in terms of performance. So that's sort of like one lens through this. And there's, again, there's a lot here that I'm sort of purposely ignoring just to kind of keep this tight. But we've got, attendance, we've got academic data, we've got behavioral data hiding here as well. So if the student has some incidents where, he's not making necessarily the best choices, I say he, it could be a she, I don't really know who this is, then we can drill into that as well. And we also have the opportunity, and I'm going to shift, as I said, you're going to wear a few hats. We're going to shift to that interventionist role. Interventionists as well have a hand in this. And so, for example, with this particular student, he or she is getting some support, some social, emotional, and academic support, specifically using a plan called CHICO, a check-in, check-out, that some of you may know something about, where basically a student checks in with an adult to start the day, to end the day, to sort of keep that student on track. And so that information lives in here as well. This was something that Performance Plus did, as I mentioned earlier. This was a facet we never used. And this particular tool, EduClimber, is really designed primarily for this kind of stuff. And this is really our growing area right now. We started using this tool to keep track of attendance in terms of interventions, who's showing up to get that extra math or to get that extra reading. We're now growing on and not just doing that, but also using this data to keep track of progress, which is really like the money shot, really what we need to do here. So for example, with this student, we can sort of keep track of how is this student doing around this CHICO work. They've set a goal, this team, for this student to be successful, to sort of hit the marks in that check-in, check-out, that daily check-in with an adult. Is that student hitting the mark at least 63% of the time? Well, right now, the student's at 71%, and we can actually look and see what's the daily looking like for that student and see where the peaks are and where the valleys are. And so every dot is a day for that student. You can see sort of most of the time he or she living above the goal line, but you can also see those days where things didn't go as planned. And then we've superimposed on top of that, those red bars are times when somebody else had to get involved, probably because of a discipline log or something like that. So again, we don't need to make sense of what this graph means, but just to give you a sense of the power of this tool. Now thinking of both that classroom teacher and the interventionist and the team as we shift toward that sort of that next hat, the team of people who are trying to support students like this, we're just trying to put everything into everyone's hands so that they can get at this, make some good decisions about what the student needs, and then work from there. Brenda?
Chris, is this just, when you're speaking of interventionist, is this just, is this for wellness, or would this be reading groups, would this be?
Everything.
Okay.
Right. So if there's that.
Tutors?
Yep, exactly. We've got math tutors who are in here, meeting with groups, keeping track of how often they're meeting, reporting that information to families periodically around the time reports of progress come out, so that families know, okay, so my student met 91% of the time with her interventionist. And we have a way of sort of tracking that information as well, and then still trying to grow in that area of like true progress monitoring. What's holding us back in that regard is having measures. We need to find more tools to measure math growth, like periodic weekly math growth. We have a lot of like homemade tools, but we've got to start to move those into here so that we can start to build that story so that future teachers and future teams can sort of reflect on, all right, where has this kid grown? Where does this kid still need some work? And all of that, bless you, would be sort of encapsulated here in this warehouse.
And you can imagine how this progress monitoring really helps when we're looking at students who might be underperforming. So they're underperforming in math. Are they showing up for the intervention, number one? And is the intervention working, number two? So if they're not showing progress, then we need to question those two things.
So I'm going to shift now to teams that support, for example, an MTSS team, and also maybe sort of throw on the administrator hat along the way too, and sort of zoom out to data that's not tied to a student. But just to show you another function of this tool, there is a piece called thresholds. Again, we're trying to get better at this, which basically allow you to, and I'll show you, for example, with period attendance at the high school, for example. And again, you're not going to see anything you shouldn't see. But to give you a sense of how this works, we have designed the system to keep track on a 2-week period, because we're very interested, especially for MTSS work, in keeping track of sudden changes in behavior. And those measurable changes are often reflected in attendance, whether it's just not showing up at all or perhaps being tardy more. But then other things like, of course, academics, but we don't often have academics, aside from grades, which are collected fairly frequently. A lot of our big data or big tests and stuff are captured infrequently. But we do have other data like nurse visits. Is the student going to the nurse more suddenly? And is that an avoidance issue? So we're tracking that information, keeping that in here. Changes in attendance, as I mentioned, changes in discipline. So if suddenly now Kim is racking up 3 office referrals in a 2-week period, and that's out of the ordinary for her, we're trying to couple this information together to use this system to help us identify changes in behavior that might indicate, all right, something may be going on with this student and we need to intervene. So, for example, with period attendance, we are basically putting together a picture of and tagging kids as to how many periods they're missing in a 2-week window. So, for example, if they've missed 1 to 4 periods in that 2-week window, well, they get a point. Getting a point still sort of falls in the green. We're not too concerned about that. 5 to 9 periods missed in 2 weeks, now we're in the yellow zone. Now you've got a point for this, you've now got 2 points. If I've missed 10 to 14 periods, I'm now in the orange, and if I've missed more than 15 periods, I'm now in the red. So we basically set these cut points, and then we get the system to do the work for us to give us an idea of what does the picture look like. And so an administrator or an MTSS team can come to this and say, okay, we've got a fair number of kids in 2 weeks who have missed, 102 kids who have missed 15 or more periods. We can click on that, wedge, see who these students are. You just see numbers, but names would pop up. And now we can sort of marry that data with other information that we have to say, okay, what's going on with these friends and what do we need to do to intervene? So we've got period attendance, we've got nurse visits, all of these sort of running on these 2-week windows. And then just to give you an example of how we sort of compile all that, the CHS, or Concord High MTSS team, we've built this sort of risk level threshold here, and I'll just open this up for a minute to just nerd out for a moment here. So now we try to combine this information and say, okay, I want to know who has missed 4 or more periods, tardy 4 or more periods, who has missed 5 or more periods. We've sort of given some thought as to these cut point numbers. Who's in addition to that had 3 incidents, discipline incidents in that 2-week period, and 5 or more nurse visits. And put all that together and say, all right, do we have anybody that meets a lot of these metrics? Fortunately, we haven't anybody hit all 4 yet. But what we can do is we can say, all right, who's hitting at least some of these? And so you can't see it, but there's one tiny little red wedge there over that 2-week period coming out right before vacation and coming out of it. We got one student who's hit 3 of those. And so we want to bring that information to the house teams and say, okay, is this kiddo on your radar? And do the same with kids who have perhaps hit 2 of these kids in the yellow wedge. And so we're reporting back to the houses on a 2-week period every 2 weeks and saying, all right, here are the kids on this. How does that jive with your story? To sort of make sure that we're paying attention to the right friends. Brenda.
Sounds terrifying as a student, but fascinating. Who is the we that is checking this every 2 weeks and sending it back, and who are they sending it back to?
So a lot of it's automated. So we built this so that it runs automatically from these thresholds, principals, school counselors, anyone else on the team who should, gets an email that's triggered by the system on Monday morning. They wake up at 5 in the morning to an email saying, "Whew, here are some friends you should be paying attention to," and then they combine that information with what the houses, for example, at the high school already have in play. The school counselors, to sit and listen to them, they have their finger on the pulse of each of these students. And so when they look at these lists and say, okay, here are some friends that are checking some boxes here, 99% of the time they're like, yep, got it. Once in a while, though, a friend that they wasn't on the radar emerges. And so that's what we're trying to pick up. And just, it's another sort of measure to confirm that we're paying attention to the right friends and that no one's falling under the radar. Barbara.
And additionally, I just wanted to add that the teams meet every other week, the MTSS teams, Tier 2, Tier 1, and the Behavior MTSS B. So they're meeting regularly to go over this data. And most of the times, like Chris said, there's not very many surprises.
So my question was going to be, what event would trigger everyone looking at this? But no event has to trigger it. The data from checking into the nurse's office or being marked absent for your support class or whatever is automatically in there, and so that triggers the email. So
And when the schools each has an MTSS team that meets on a regular basis, so now they've got information fed to them.
So along Brenda's line of students must take this, you always think Big Brother is watching me, and my immediate reaction is always negative. Like, I don't want Big Brother watching me, but I really like Big Brother in this regard because it's non-judgmental. It's just factual information
Right.
on where you are when,
Right.
and when you combine all that together.
Right. I mean, going to the nurse a lot in 2 weeks doesn't necessarily mean that things are going wrong for you. It could just mean you're sick.
Right.
And then we also have students who, are medically fragile and have to go to the nurse a lot. So by itself, that doesn't tell us anything. But add it to the mix. We're just trying to collect as many measures as we can to just kind of keep tabs.
Kind of reminds me when we were in school at Concord High, you miss 3 classes, you get a note sent home. You miss 6, you get another note.
Miss 7 years
Right.
past the class.
Well, and then
Yeah, Grant
I'm
can
very
tell you all
grateful
about
that
this.
I had a grandmother living with us when those notes came home, so that my parents didn't ever see them. But that's what
Can you bring one in for us to see? We would love to sort of dig into
I
that, Brenda.
probably do have
Okay.
them somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, Graham and his team, they have an attendance team that's looking specifically at this, using this tool, using Power School. So they're zooming in on just that piece, doing that kind of work to make sure that parents are kept in the loop or families are kept in the loop to make sure that everyone knows.
Do you ever share this visual information with the students?
Sometimes, maybe not so much out of here. More of the stuff that's coming, that's being shared with students might come out of, say, iReady, for example.
But I'm just thinking, like, when you had the thing, the with the grass, the red line.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Like, that's such a visual.
Yes.
Like, look, sweetie, you might say you're doing fine, but look at this.
Right, that particular situation,
Right.
absolutely. And I know for a fact, because Tom told me the story, that graph, for example, is being shared with him or her.
There's nothing, there's
for
no
sure.
descriptive words in there.
Right.
There's nothing
And it's
saying,
their
"Your parents said,
story."
"Oh, here it is. So
Right.
Tell me about this.
For
What's
sure.
going on with you?
For sure. Sarah?
Oh, Chris, I love this, and I think that not only does it support individual learners, but Barbara had a question along the same lines. How can we use crosstab data to give themes to our overall community? When you said about getting the information in other people's hands, it's this data, correct? That's like presented at the high school orientation, where it's like, hey guys, if you miss so many classes, like you're not getting good grades. Like,
So
am I
that's my inroad to thy last piece,
Oh.
okay? And then, because I think I'm over time, and the people behind me I can feel the daggers. They'll like wrap it up. So if my last hat is I'll be Principal Gallo, and if I want to sort of check in on what's going on in English 9 and English 10, this tool can do that piece too. And so I did the Julia Child, had a couple in the oven already to show you, what it could look like. And so if Chris wants to sit down and sort of map out what's going on with English 9 and 10 for the first, I think this is actually just the first quarter, she can sort of quickly look and see, all right, so we've got, and we can add numbers onto this too, but we can see that 43 of our students sort of are at that beginning level in English 9, and we can see how it plays out for the rest of that cohort of kids. I can see how many kids, I can click on the bar and see who the kids are. And to Sarah's point, if I want to sort of zoom out and say, all right, what does this story look like for kids who have an attendance issue? who have missed
Are they in the red?
80%. Well, you'll see. So I'm gonna filter that for just those students, and you can see a very different story. Now, it's not many kids, thankfully, but remember what that looked like before. The blue is gone, and now, thankfully, it's only 10 students. We wish it were less, but it's still a very different story. So to Sarah's point, yeah, this is what we want to keep beating that drum with students, like you got to show up.
Well, and then instead of beating a drum about you're not trying hard enough, you're not do, hey, what can we do to help you get here?
Exactly.
Now we're looking at what's causing the problem,
Right.
not what we think is causing the problem, which, oh, you must need extra help.
And they get to see the value of why I need to be in class.
Right, for sure.
And I have to say, Chris, you did a fabulous job with Tom this summer at the administrative retreat. Every school got their data, looked at their attendance, set goals, also looked at academics and set goals. So the tool has really been helpful. And one of the reasons I feel so compelled to make sure that this is visible to you is sometimes we're bringing that big, as I said before, that big data. We're bringing the SAT scores, the SAS scores. But this is what we're doing behind the scenes regularly.
Do you know if the schools are using sort of like these data points for these celebrations? Because when I go to that, you're like 10 students, how many, 10 out of, I say maybe 100 or plus, are
Right.
celebrating the 90 that are doing?
I would hope so. I can't tell you any stories at the moment. I mean, I know a lot of celebration is going into growth.
Yep.
Again, back to iReady. We're trying to really get more and more students seeing that data for themselves. I was just in a third grade class today showing them what does growth look like when you sit down and take that diagnostic 3 times a year. What are we looking for? And so, yeah, for sure, we're doing things like that. From out of here, I would hope so. I can't tell you a story right now. No.
Alex?
Do the students themselves get access to this data? Probably the more the high school age students than the elementary ones, but
Their grades that we didn't look at, well, we did see one last graph about grades. That stuff all lives in Power School and in Schoology. They see that information. They see attendance in there as well. A lot of the intervention data might be shared by the interventionist. In terms of that whole picture, looking through this is really designed primarily to be a tool for staff with the ability to, share elements of it. But it's not something we would give students access to. Right.
okay.
Exactly.
All of a sudden, the data looks different. Well, geez.
It's much stronger now, isn't it?
That's all I have. Thank you for
Are
your
there
time
any
and
other
attention. I
questions?
appreciate it.
Thank you guys very much. We appreciate that. I think next we're going to
Oh,
be,
please.
next we'll hear from CRTC for the new teacher program guide.
Good. Do you mind handing out the?
They're all handed out.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Hi, Val.
Hi. Let's see. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Thanks for having me. My name is Val Cook, and I am CRTC's Education Behavioral Science instructor. But as of 3 years ago, we changed my job a little bit and added an instructional coach role. So Ann Fowler asked me to just come and just give you some information about what we're doing to support the teachers in the CRTC. So career and technical education, teachers are really interesting because for the most part, they come to these jobs after a fairly lengthy career in their industry. So they don't necessarily have an educational background. Previously, I spent 7 years as the coordinator and instructor for the New Hampshire CTE boot camp. So what that was centers from around our state would send their new teachers to me in the summer, and for a week I would try to cram in as much information as possible for how to teach. It was a daunting task. It's really tricky. So I have that experience, and what I saw was the biggest issue for people transitioning into this field from industry was that it was hard to develop that identity of seeing themselves as a teacher, right? So they might come into this job thinking, well, I'm a mechanic and I'm going to teach. And so the goal really is to shift that mindset to, I am a teacher who is also a skilled mechanic. So 3 years ago, when we kind of created this CRTC instructional coaching position, we were thinking about the fact that anytime a new program is introduced, when people retire, typically people stay teaching at the CRTC for a large amount of time. We've got lots of retirements coming up in the next stretch of time. So every time there's a shift like that, we've got new teachers who are coming from industry who need some support with learning all there is to learn about teaching. So one of the things that we thought we would love to share with you is just kind of what does that look like for me? The coaches in our district all kind of have different roles, and I think especially the CRTC instructional coaching position is very much a jigsaw puzzle where it's a lot of pieces putting together to hopefully support teachers in supporting student learning. So if you want to look up there, one of the things that we realized needed to happen was to have me as a coach involved in some of the district and school initiatives so that there would be cohesion between what's happening in our district. So part of that, I joined the professional development committee for our district, and that's been really helpful in terms of bridging the needs of our staff, because they can be very different with what we can offer them for professional development. And then another piece we added was I'm able to attend the Concord High Curriculum Facilitator meetings. Again, it's really helping kind of me have a pulse on what are the current trends in education that we need to be thinking about, and what can I do to help my teachers, have the skills to meet those trends and needs. And then another thing that's been extremely helpful to me is attending district and school coaching meetings. We've been developing, what is coaching in the Concord School District? What does it look like? How do we coach effectively? And it's definitely been a process to kind of figure out what does it look like in our district, but plus at the CRTC. I have found what's a little bit different in the CRTC coaching role is that the brand new teachers are needing a little bit more guidance and suggestions, where when I work with veteran teachers, it is much more facilitating a conversation and asking questions, getting them to think about their teaching. So one of the pieces as we move down the puzzle is that whole group is looking at how can I support CRTC? So district initiatives like curriculum mapping, our staff needed some support with what that looks like and how to get those maps written. I'm helping lead a PLC in the CRTC where we're really looking at our assessments and having each other evaluate and question assessments and how that helps students reach their goals.
PLC?
Oh, sorry, professional learning community.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
So for everyone else.
I know, sorry.
For Big Brother, he needs to know.
Well, and it's this teaching lingo too, which I'm going to get to in a minute,
Yeah.
which is why I wrote this. So anything that we're doing as a district really is I'm trying to be the bridge and help the whole group of CRTC. And then I also offer some small group and individual support. So I've tried to create some job embedded PD for our staff. So for the last couple of years, I've been hosting a monthly book study where we're reading a professional book and then coming together and talking about some focus questions and doing some activities related to what we're reading about. So last year and this year, we're really focusing on universal design for learning. How can we make sure we are removing barriers for students so that they can be successful? So one of the things that I decided this summer was that teaching, and Barb, you just illustrated it, is full of so much vocabulary, terminology. It's tough. And I come from I'm a lifelong educator, and teaching teachers is what I've always done. We've got sometimes principals who come from different backgrounds, and our mentors come from different backgrounds. So I tried this summer, and this is my first draft, is to create a guide for new teachers. So you all have a copy of this. The goal is to help me as the coach focus my sessions for staff and for us to all use common language. So when Anne is evaluating our teachers, when I am working with them in the coach setting, when the mentors are having their meetings with their mentees, that we're using the same terminology so that it becomes less confusing. So this book just kind of contains that overview of teaching, right? And what is quality teaching? Some of this it is written for a new teacher who's not been in education. So when I was writing it this summer, really thinking about how to use visuals and language that will make sense to a new teacher. So, when I start working with a new CRTC instructor, we do just kind of globally go over this, and then the goal is, as we're working together over the year, to, if we're talking about assessment, that we're going to go here and review what this says about assessment, and then dive into the support they need or what that looks like in their classroom. I imagine that this booklet will be constantly updated and revamped, but it's a place to start so that we're all on the same page, because that was really missing. And
It's one of those things that's hard to believe it didn't exist before.
yes.
But now that it's here, we're really grateful. And
Yeah.
happy.
Do you have any? I could go on about this forever, so I'm going to pause. Do you have any questions before I just keep?
I have one about the coach, the new instructors, the new teachers. When during their day are they getting this this opportunity to go over these things with you and to have these meetings? Is it in addition to their, well, it must be in addition to their teaching time, but is it part of their day, I guess, is what I'm asking.
It is part of their
Okay.
day. So we were very lucky that we were able to adjust my schedule so that I have one period that I am not teaching, that my colleagues are teaching, so that I can push into classrooms and do observations and provide support, any kind of support that they need. And then we all CRTC teachers have a common planning time in the afternoon. So that is when we would meet. So just for example, we have a new auto instructor this year. So when I go into his classroom to do an observation, I'm just kind of typing a running record. He has access to it. I let him have his lunch so that he can have a little breather, and then we would just get together and talk about how it went, what I noticed, what he noticed, questions that he had, and maybe some suggestions.
Barb?
Do the teachers, I mean, you're a colleague, so it's not like you're over them, so they're not feeling, oh no, if I don't do a good job, I'm in trouble. And then when you get people new to education, I don't think there's another profession in the world where you get watched as much as you do as a teacher.
No.
I mean, all day long, 30 little kids are staring at you, so you're never not being watched. You must develop incredible relationships with these educators.
The whole coaching model is built on trust.
Yeah.
And so one of the shifts when I started this position was just reminding people that I'm not an evaluator, and that while I do have coaching meetings with Anne, we're not talking about specific teachers and how they're doing in their classroom. There has to be that relationship of trust and
Well, that
respect.
shift too, back to Brenda's comment about why didn't we do this before? I mean, when we were at Concord High, the Vogue was a separate building, and the people that went to those classes, smoked in the smoking area, and they were going to work on cars or whatever they were going to do. It was loud and it didn't seem academic, and so I can see when I came back to coach like 8 years after I graduated, or 9 years, there was already a shift in the kids that were taking classes through. I don't think it was called CRTC yet, but it was like the late 80s, early 90s. But now we have some of our most diligent, high-performing students actively participating in those CRTC classes. So I can see where the pressure on the teachers might feel immense sometimes, because you have kids that can answer you back or question in ways that you're not going to get when you're under the hood of a car at a garage or in the kitchen at a restaurant. The whole dynamic must be different.
Well, the range of students that we have is just has shifted, and it's so different. So that's part of the reason why when I thought about the job embedded PD that I could do with small groups, Universal Design for Learning seemed to be the best place to start. It was Concord High was also reading one of the UDL Now books, so it just seems like it's a collective, agreement that we've all made to make sure that nobody is slipping through the cracks, and that we are thinking about our teaching in a way that we're not saying, oh, well, those students don't want to do their homework or they don't want to come to school. It's really, what can I do as a teacher to remove any of those barriers, to work with students to help them understand their learning. Because we are the last stop before they're off to their careers or college experiences. So, it's a matter of helping them understand who they are as learners. And the UDL focus really has helped us, I think, as a department, have those conversations about learning and about students.
And I've got to admit, I'm embarrassed to say that I guess I didn't realize how much the instructors in this CRTC program are teaching. I guess I kind of, and I don't think I really thought about it much at all. We'll change that now. But I think I was thinking they come in, they teach their class, and they go. But that's not. They're there for a full day. They are educators. And if they weren't before, they are now. And I think that's a really important thing for all of our community to understand. Not, and if I may be the only board member that didn't understand that, but
No, it's a mindset, though. I
yeah.
think of them as facilitators.
Facilitate.
Yes,
I guess that's what it was. I thought of them more as facilitators than teachers, and that's not the case. And I think that's a really important distinction to make for these people as well. So,
And that's that mindset shift, I think, that we're all making.
yeah, Alex.
What sort of licensure or certification pathway do the CRTC teachers take?
Most of them are on Alternative 4 certifications. So I'm also involved in, supporting that journey too, as much as I can, in terms of offering, meetings and workshops and, job embedded PD, the observations and conversations after are helping meet those. There's competencies that they have to meet, both about teaching in general, and then teaching CTE also is a whole other process of learning. How do we fulfill requirements of the Perkins grant? So yeah, there are competencies, and then actually today I was at one of the Alternative 4 meetings and just kind of talking about the existing plan and how I can provide support within that plan. Yeah.
That's a rigorous process, too. I did all 4 years and years ago
Yeah.
for my health and PE, and it was a lot of work.
And it's hard. The new CTE teachers, they have to be patient with themselves because they are literally like building the plane while they're flying. They're learning to teach right on the job while they're teaching. So we've tried to give them that wraparound support where we have a strong mentor in place through the district, myself as their coach, and Anne, as their supervisor, and then we have some program coordinators who help with other areas of teaching, like the work-based learning, setting that all up. That's a whole job in itself. And to learn how to, one of the coordinators provides help in how do you communicate with the sending school staff. So, if you have a student with an IEP and you have some concerns, how do you reach out to the case manager? What does that look like? So yeah, that wraparound support is what
Because they're full-time students as well as full-time
yes,
employees.
Yes,
Yeah.
You're very right. Yeah, it's a huge job. So I just wanted to, just know this is iterative. I mean, it's going to be updated as needed. And I just, printed a separate copy of the kind of menu of choices. I think I would say I work with more new teachers than experienced teachers, but I'm there for all of them. I do have some experienced teachers who will just pop in during my coaching hours with a rubric and an assessment and say, can we talk? Can you read through this? Ask me some questions about it. But I would say the majority of my time is spent with the newer teachers. But the embedded PD, like the book study, it's a variety. It's all the teachers, new and veteran.
Thank you very much. It's
You're
it's
welcome.
great to have, and I'd like to see maybe all of our staff get something like this. All new staff at the beginning of the year. I mean,
You don't have to do that.
no, not for you to do.
Yeah.
We do that.
Great idea. You do have something like that?
A district
Yeah.
position or something
Yeah.
like this, because we have mentoring, we have like an onboarding process, but to have the coach is a very different thing than mentoring and having that go-to person for the piece. You're going in the classroom, observing instruction for the purpose of adding and fine-tuning, but not an evaluative piece. That's huge.
And if all of our mentors had these to give new teachers, or something like this,
Yeah.
you know, as
They
you
do.
said they do.
Yep.
But it's just to have that booked for a new teacher to be able to go through and say, oh, that's a question I had, this is where I go to get it. It's-
Or to hear, you know, if we're talking about PLCs and they're like, I don't really want to ask.
And I don't want to admit that I don't know what a
what's
PLC is, right?
again?
Yeah.
Just
They
tell
can
them to
just
ask
do
me.
that. They can do that on their own.
The other piece too, I would imagine that usually when districts are hiring teachers, the first thing you ask is, are you certified? And if
Right.
you're not, and you've got 3 other applicants that are, oftentimes they'll get chosen just because logistically it's much easier to hire already certified staff. But this is the opposite, it's people teaching a craft, welding, and so finding a welder is more important than what that state certification that welder has. So your group of teachers would present a much different challenge than your group of teachers, because you're hiring people that maybe never thought they'd be teachers. And now here you are. Here are your kids, and oh, by the way, good luck.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I've been on the interview committees, and we're really looking for people who are great at their craft, but who are willing to learn and be humble and ask those questions and not feel like they have to know all the answers. Because
your
they
welding,
certainly don't.
and then let us-
Yes, we'll take care of,
Yeah.
here's, how you can become a really great teacher. The only other thing I just wanted to show you that, explain why I added it. One of the things I'm using my time for is trying to create some professional development materials. So I had gone to a workshop for NIASC, and they took us through a protocol, which is just a really structured way of discussing work. And I decided, because our Universal Design for Learning is our focus, I took that and modeled it and created one for the CRTC staff for us to review each other's work. Because there's this misconception that just because I don't know auto, mechanical terminology or content, that that I don't have anything to offer the auto teacher, for example, or that the criminal justice teacher, because she doesn't know cosmetology, that we can't work together. But trying to find some more protocols and processes that allow us to look at each other's content and give each other feedback. So I had put this together, and we tried it, and it was really successful. It was a little, it's a growing process to, really train staff to have those discussions about each other's work without feeling self-conscious about not knowing the content. Because we definitely can give each other support and make suggestions about how we meet all learners.
Well, and I think sometimes if you're not caught up in the details of the lesson, if I know nothing about auto mechanics, I'm not concerned with how the oil's being changed. I'm concerned
You're right.
with how the student's being taught to change the oil.
Yep.
So that's where the struggle might be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So sometimes those eyes are better because I'm not hung up on the mechanics.
Yeah.
And we don't cut that way. I know, snip, snip. That sounds good.
Yeah, you're
but-
not in the weeds
right,
of the
yeah, yeah,
content.
But, sometimes there are better set of eyes, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you, this looks like really
Yeah. You're
difficult,
welcome.
interesting, and important work. Thank
It
you.
is. Thank you.
Thanks, Val.
Now we welcome the high school team to come up and talk to us again about the 306s. Woohoo! We love the 306s.
Said no one ever. Yes, I said it on TV. Write it down, people.
We heard that the fourth or fifth time was the charm, so we're ready.
We appreciate
I just
it.
want to keep,
All
I
right.
think they do. I think Kim said they have copies.
Graham, do you need one?
Do you have copies called option A and option B?
they do have the copies, they're not labeled
A.
option A
I
and B,
can,
but the
I
top
can,
one,
I can help you so we can talk A
top
and
one
B.
is A.
Top one's A.
Top one's A.
Makes sense.
Under, behind that's B.
Thank you. And just to make sure, if the top one's A, then the overall elective credit for the class of 2030 would be 6. Is that the one you're in?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect, perfect. you
Yeah.
want to start?
I'll just do a quick intro.
Yep.
So we took all of your feedback and went back to curriculum facilitators with the admin team, and Kylene led us through the work once more to really talk about your feedback, mostly focused on the math portion, and to challenge the curriculum facilitators with how can we reach that benchmark of the 4 years of math, trying to maintain flexibility for students in terms of course selections, and really trying to keep the pathways an open option for students in terms of course selections. As Kylene goes through this, you'll hear that some of that has tightened up with Plan B, but we do want to fully explain both plans to you and the pros and cons, and then hear your feedback as well.
So I'll start with B and go through the class of 2030 and beyond. There's a couple pieces we've gone back and forth with the graphic designers that we just moved and hoped that perhaps that would also help with clarification. So some of the things are not necessarily totally different, but we moved them to places so that maybe it's a little bit clearer as well. With the class of 2030 in Plan B, you have arts stays at 0.5, English at 4, financial literacy, if you remember that is a new requirement. There's 4 courses that meet that 0.5. In Plan B, we are expecting 3.5 in math and 0.5 in statistics data analysis, but we still maintain that having the courses as a menu to meet that statistics and data analysis is ideal. Science is at 3.5, social studies is at 4, health and PE at 2, and to help clarify 306 requirements, the last full credit there at the bottom are the ones that you are acquiring through standards throughout your curriculum and are awarded. One is awarded after completing 12 full credits, and one is awarded after completing 18 full credits. So when you do all of that, it does drop down electives to 5.5. It maintains the 25 total credits, and it's also expecting that you have 3.5 in math, an additional 0.5 in statistics and data. But when you look at the list, unless you're planning to take an AP course and/or sociology, you're going to also be taking a math course for that additional 0.5. So in theory, most students are getting 4 full years of math in Plan B. Of course, our intent as facilitators and as administrators was to try to keep this plan as flexible as possible. That one, in our humble professional opinion, does definitely create another level of, lack of flexibility in the math especially. But this is the plan we created to try to respond to the concern about math. When we talked with facilitators and administrators the last week or so, I will share that we still do stand behind Plan A as what we would like to move forward with. However, we're also at a point now where next Wednesday on the 21st, we meet with ninth graders, incoming ninth graders, and we do need in good faith your support and a plan that you feel you can stand behind as a group. And we respect that and understand that as well. So our hope is that we will have an idea of which plan. Remember, we do have to start moving forward next week with incoming ninth graders.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything?
No.
How about questions? Go ahead.
All right, so, being the investigative, secret investigator that I am, I made some phone calls to staff that I've taught with over the years and have good relationships with, and tried to take off my school board hat and just be Barb. I also know what it's like as a special educator to try to balance a special ed or a child in need type student with a list of requirements to graduate compared to students that come in and sign up for classes and whatever. And then the third group, which is the students that want to take every hard class there is and a variety of classes. Then I thought back to my days with Jonathan Flower when I taught at Concord High School, who did all the scheduling, and hours this man disappeared, hours. I remember when it was done by hand, that's how old I am, but there's nothing easy about high school scheduling. It's impossible to make simple because there's just too many variables. So when the schedule spits out, 9 times out of 10, one student wants 3 classes and are all offered the same block, the same semester, every other year, and now they can't take the classes. So the biggest feedback I got from everyone I spoke with was that what they liked about this, they didn't like the 4 to 3 because
When you
it
say
looks-
this, can you tell us which plan you're
Plan
referring to?
A,
Plan
the one
A.
that-
What they
that-
like about
that
Plan A.
you and Pam didn't like so much.
Okay.
The number, the math number, I'm trying to be. The biggest feedback I got was, yes, it looks awful. Oh, Concord High doesn't care about math, they only need 3 credits in math to graduate now. The reality is they'll get a ton more math, which you can see in Plan B. But the bigger reality is if we control our kids into one canal of classes, which the 306s are forcing us to do, then all those options that look so enticing in our beautiful course catalog become more difficult to attain because you can't have that class until you make sure you don't want to be a senior and not have your 306s in. So the biggest concern with teachers with that AP courses would disappear, that those wonderful English electives would disappear. You know, a lot of classes that somehow didn't have these 306 requirements in them that are electives would no longer have kids sign up because, well, I can't take that class, it won't serve me in the end, even though I really want to take it. Survey of film, well, I don't know if it's called film study, whatever. You know what I'm saying? That it wasn't, yes, they felt bad about the number, but their bigger concern was that by forcing a 4 and a 4, and it comes out in math, and I don't, that part is too much for me. I didn't get into why is this not a problem somewhere else, but the basic gist of it was that they hoped the board would not get hung up on a number. That you guys have worked really hard to put all this together, that you're educators, that you're not DOE people who think 306s mean something. Sorry, DOE people, but you know, I disagree. So my wish is that as a board we just support what you think is best and pay close attention to what's actually happening in our participation by students in math classes, and just to follow the integrity of all those wonderful electives that make our course catalog so rich and vibrant, that we don't end up stifling kids because we have this thing we have to meet from the state. So that's sort of my general plan. What I like about what you've done is you've reworked basically the same level of you know, classes and what you need to take in a way that fulfills the 4 credits for math.
Right.
But the fact that it takes a half an elective away, that might not seem much to us, but you know, if that elective that you want, you can't take because you have to take something else. I don't know. I guess that's where I went. They both look okay to me, but I would like to just say, you tell me what you want, and I'm gonna give you a thumbs up. That's sort of how I feel about it.
Alex?
So my question is just on the differences here between A and B. With I think you had mentioned that the 306 requirements down at the bottom there, those are just like embedded or acquired throughout the curriculum naturally. For example, like would that mean that you might get logic and rhetoric in your civics class, or you might get financial literacy
Correct.
in math and such? And so that.
Before they gave us a whole list of classes and which 306s existed in which classes. So if you had that list in front of you, you could see that if this elective had a 306 requirement in it, but this one didn't, students would pick this one because it has a 306. So that course might eventually disappear because kids don't have the space to take it. Does that make sense?
Right, and that was kind of part 2 of my question. There is like, so then Plan B, financial literacy would be outlined as a course requirement that would then impede the opportunity for an elective or an advanced course. And I recall at one of the previous meetings where we discussed 306s, it was the general consensus from some of the student population was that a lot of classes are that they want to take, they have to take through VLAX just because their schedule is already so jam-packed.
This was creative.
I'm a little concerned that you are looking for some direction from us, and we don't have a full board meeting. Well, I guess we do have one Wednesday night, but I don't know how we could get you what you need from the full board by Wednesday.
I think our hopes were that instructional committee would give a nod on the direction that we bring to the next full board meeting.
Okay.
And that the high team would take what the nod is from the instructional committee and develop a tentative student registration guide to use to help guide us for course registration through January.
Okay. That I think we can do.
Am I misrepresenting?
I think that is totally accurate.
Okay.
I mean, as you can imagine, the last thing we want to do is be disingenuous with the class of 23 and their caregivers in ensuring we know the direction they're on. And so, now, that being said, most ninth graders have more requirements and fewer electives. So it's not necessarily all impacting them. However, one of the things we did with school counselors last week and also with facilitators is we started playing out the scenario. What will it look like for the class of 2030 in looking at what courses they might have taken with old requirements and what will we be recommending for them with new requirements? And to your point, what's interesting is on paper, 0.5 feels small. But there are dominoes here that are going to occur. And so for a ninth grader incoming, after you take out many of the requireds, English 9, geography and cultures, their science course, a full year of math that they take, all ninth graders have a full year of math, ideally a world language, there are going to be some other requirements for them that they may want to fulfill in their ninth grade year so that they have more room in their junior and senior year given this new set of requirements. So we may advise a ninth grader, given these requirements, to fulfill their financial literacy as a ninth grader. We might advise them to fulfill their New Hampshire social studies elective. The way that that then becomes a domino is we may not have as many sections of sustainability next year, which is a ninth grade science elective. We may not have as many sections of intro to engineering because they're going to pack their freshman schedule with requirements, understandably so that they can think about CTE courses and AP courses their junior and senior years. So we're projecting in meetings what this looks like next year, or just with our section numbers, what it looks like 2 years from now, and we're trying to do all that work. And so while 0.5 difference is not really a ton, just recognize it could be sections of things in places that 2 years from now you might be saying to us, where did Earth and Space Science go? So that's a piece of what we're trying to prepare you for too.
Yeah, well, that was the overriding message I got.
Yep, and so is it the biggest change? No, it's not. The 306 requirements are doing this for the big piece of it, not us, not you. So I think as a board, whatever you're most comfortable with, given the concerns, especially around math, we'll make work. We just also are leery too of creating so much rigidity that we then can't, respond to it appropriately.
So to be clear, Plan A, we would be removing 1 credit from math, which would be then a 306 requirement of statistics and data analysis and financial literacy. So even though it's not considered in the math, it's
Right.
it's not a separate math class, it's still a math requirement.
Correct. So
Okay.
you still, even in Plan A,
Yes.
there were 3 credits of math. They would still need the data and analysis statistics requirement. If you look at the list, unless you're taking an AP course, you're going to be meeting that through a math requirement. So most students will have 3.5 years of math in Plan A or Option A.
Okay.
In Option B, you're now saying all students will have 3.5 full of math and the statistics and data analysis. So most kids will have 4 full years of math. That's what you're saying.
And the AP class that someone might take may not be a math class, but they're an AP student, and we are assuming that they've gotten the math skills that they need to do
Yeah, they'll be meeting a math competency
a
in
math
that course.
competency.
They've
Thank you. That's
crosswalked the 306 competencies for the data, statistic and data analysis, and they've shown that we can meet this within our course with the data analysis or statistics that we may do in AP economics or AP psychology or any of the menu courses.
There used to be a class called Bio 2 that had an amazing statistics and analysis. That little, the little rats. Remember all the little? Yeah, they were creepy, but it was a lot of fun. So lowering the math requirement means a student could get that in their science class. They wouldn't have to take it as a math class separate from everything else.
And the 306 requirements that have 2 credits attached to them are all embedded in courses, or are any of those standalone classes that students would have to take?
Are you speaking to the digital literacy and logic rhetoric?
Yes, Plan A.
Those are all embedded within existing
So all
courses.
4 of those skills,
I'm sorry, no, so the digital literacy and the logic and rhetoric are the ones that are fully embedded within courses. After meeting a certain credit threshold, students would earn that 0.5. The financial literacy, if you look at the bottom, those are another menu of courses that would meet that 306 requirement of financial literacy.
okay.
I just wanted to express appreciation for the hard work you've all done. I mean, I think this is a commendable job to try and distill this down in as plain language as possible. I think the legislature's put some outstanding demands on school districts. I would not be able to support Plan A at all. Stepping back the math requirements for kids who have experienced COVID doesn't feel like something any of the constituents I've spoken to or who have spoken to me about this seem open to. And I'm just here to represent the people, and that seems to be the predominant view of the folks I've spoken with. I do regret, I mean, I think I'm probably in the minority, though, to feel out here. It seems like we've had some support for Plan A. Is that right?
Well, see, I just look at it from having lived the life and been a part of a high school and how overwhelming the whole scheduling process and the ripple effect of offering this class versus this is. So
I know,
that-
I mean, I've taught in high school too,
Yeah.
and I'm sympathetic. It's
Yeah.
just that this is what the state legislature's required. We follow the law, unfortunately. And I think that Plan B, more so than Plan A, has the potential to communicate that to our communities. That it is not Concord High School making these decisions. This is the result of the New Hampshire legislature making these decisions for our school districts.
I worry that if we do that, are we making a political comment at the expense of our teachers and our students? And I don't know
Yeah,
that.
say more. What are you, yeah.
Well, like, if we go Plan B because we want people to understand that this isn't the schools districts necessarily, but we're following what the legislature has done, and if you don't like it, we need to change the legislature. I don't want to handicap our students and our staff to make that point, I guess.
Arguably, that is the reality that we are in. I mean, when the House Education Committee proposed this, that's what they're saying. I mean, and I don't feel the need to, like, I think what it does is it has the potential to undermine public faith in public education even more so, because I don't think your average constituent that we have understands that this is made at the state level. They will hold this district responsible. And it will undercut faith in local education more so when they hear that for the second time in a row, we're dropping the math requirements for the kids who are most squeezed.
Something that jumps out at me on Plan B, I noticed that there's more options there for the statistics and data analysis. For example, statistics of sports jumped out at me. There's a certain population of students that comes to my mind with that would probably be signing up for that in droves, like those that want the health or the PE background and don't necessarily think math is one of their strong suits. That can all classes such as that can be a way to really help close those gaps in math, meet that concern about not doing enough math, and just almost it's essentially disguising it in a way. And I see that that's offered through Plan B and not Plan A. What was the reasoning for that?
That's still in planning.
It is?
They were accidentally left off of the grid.
Ah.
They were in the program of studies,
We'll say it
so
can
good
be
catch.
nominated.
That's a really good catch. They were originally part of the plan. They just accidentally got left off of the grid. Yeah, we weren't trying to move any courses that we hadn't originally presented on the slideshow, but we recognized that.
So all the courses original are still being offered?
That's correct. That's correct. And nothing new has sort of been thrown in there to sneakily. We wouldn't do that
Right.
either.
No.
But we agree about
global
statistics of sports.
What's that?
But we agree about the statistics of sports.
Yeah, I
That is
think,
very
you know, I think that if Plan B can be supported by a majority of the board with an understanding that there are going to be cons to that plan too. And I think that to be discussed with the full board to understand that while constituents, and believe me, I work with the math department and I am one of the people who pushed for them to put Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 together, and I am all for understanding how important math is. So I too understand that. And I too want to see that. I just also know that there are going to be constituents who in 2 to 3 years are saying, my kid doesn't have room for blank, and they really wanted to do blank. Now that's going to be perhaps a new challenge for them.
Or a bigger challenge.
Or a bigger challenge. So I think that it's a matter of, and to that end, we can say what we said is we valued math. That was really important for us. That's where we wanted to do this, in spite of the 306s. So this is what we decided to go with. And we may be coming to you, and sharing some of that information about where courses are shifting at the high school. And how does that feel? What does that look like? And what is it doing for students? And ask them, what it feels like it's doing. Because they won't know until they're in it as well,
That's all why this committee is so important, because it's directly impacting our students.
Right.
And that's why we're here.
Right.
Well,
So
they're
it's a
the
very
ones that
hard
will
decision
pay
to
the
make
price,
too.
whatever
Yeah,
we
they will,
choose.
right.
It's not, I, to a point, you have a much more global outlook on this than I do. I'm only looking at, Mr. Smith's math class and the 25 kids sitting in front of him. That's what I'm looking at. And I'm looking at putting a schedule together and having to go to an English teacher and say, we can't fit this elective in anymore, so it's no longer going to be offered. Like, I look at the fallout that will happen in the day-to-day lives of the people living with our decisions. Sarah Robinson, I point because that's where she sat.
Yes.
I'm a very visual. When I go like this, when I talk of old students, I'm pointing to where they sat in my room. So Sarah said, we should. There were no educators really on the 306 committee that did all this craziness. We should leave it to the educators. And this is a place where I feel like you all put hours and hours of work in. I would much rather defend option A to cranky people in the community who then have kids come to me and say, I can't fit this in my schedule, or this isn't working, or that isn't working, or classes are disappearing. And we need both sides.
Well, what
of
about
this.
taxpayers who say our kids need to go to school for reading and math, and
Well, and they still are.
but their
Okay.
requirements dropped?
Yeah.
I mean, you raise excellent points, Barb. I'm not trying to shortchange you.
No.
And I think your point about children on IEPs is well taken, and I recognize that.
Yeah.
I have been really impressed with the district's ability to present, differentiated instruction in math, particularly.
Yeah.
And I think they
No,
do a
I can
tremendous
see
job.
that. I can see that too. I think sometimes the number doesn't tell the whole story. I guess that's where it is more for me, that I think most kids will take. So it doesn't count as a math class, but, if kids are taking, statistics and sports or financial literacy, those are math classes, even if they're not listed under a math requirement. I think kids will still get 4 years of math. It's just what we're calling it. In this age of call things whatever you want.
And I totally understand Sarah's point about
Yeah.
the communication to the community
Yeah.
around of like what it looks like and what we are offering to students. And I'm just wondering too, because really I think what the 2030 and beyond, when you look at Plan A, it says the 3 math and the statistics and data analysis are below, and that can be confusing to constituents who are looking at this. So what I'm wondering, Sarah, is if we were to put that statistics and data analysis in that 0.5 around the math, yes, it's still dropping to 3.5, essentially, but is that a better communication message to the community?
I'd be, as long as that line that says mathematics 3.5 doesn't drop, I'm happy with that. I think that would be satisfactory.
Is that a compromise we could make? And
So can I ask for clarification, just to make sure? We've looked at these so many times. You have no idea. I see it in my sleep right now. So what I'm hearing is, on option A or plan A, whatever it says on the
Yes.
top, we would do something similar that what we did on plan B, where we would boldface statistics/data analysis. So there would be a bold 3, and then there would be a bold 0.5 that is statistics and data analysis underneath it. And we would do that in that column, and we would also do it in the column for 28 and 29.
yes.
As long as we can say with full faith, we have not dropped the math standards for these kids.
We can also move financial literacy up. We can also move financial literacy up above it like we did on the other one, because that also could help with that communication.
Yes.
please.
And then it would be back up at 4, right? I mean, it's the same thing. We're just, not, instead of pulling out of a box, we're putting it
Right.
back in a box.
Well, the truth of the matter is, most of the community is not watching these meetings, unfortunately, and this is what they're gonna see, you know?
Right.
And for them to see that the communication of that we are still offering a rigorous math offering, or rigorous math requirement, I think would,
It's not, that doesn't change any, as far as I just want to make
No.
sure that I'm clear and understanding, moving that out of its box on its own in the bottom to back up under math doesn't change anything.
Correct, and it actually maintains the electives
Yep.
for the class of 2030 at 6,
Yep.
is what it does.
Good.
Now, I just want to throw it out there, though.
Yeah.
It is going to say 2027 is going to have 4 math credits, and then 28-29 is going to have
3.5 and 0.5.
3.5 and 0.5, and then class of 20 is going to have 3.0 and 0.5.
Yes.
Yes.
However, the electives will go down still.
No, they
No,
will
they
stay the
won't.
same.
Everything's-
We shifted
we're
things.
shifting.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
We're just moving. We're
Where
not.
we're just
deleting-
moving where it is on the paper. We're not
I
changing
think
anything.
The key thing is it still is meets 306s, and to Sarah's concern, it's transparency on how we're meeting it within our graduation requirements, which setting those is the purview of the board. So,
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Good job, guys.
so do you
Okay.
guys wanna?
Would you let me?
What that is.
Yeah.
I would like to.
My scribbled piece of paper.
I vote for that.
I would like to make a motion that the instructional committee approve Plan C,
Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
Plan A, B positive.
which would put statistics and analysis for 0.5 under math, and financial literacy also for 0.5 under math. Yes, that's it.
Can I do the financial literacy like it is on Plan B,
That
which
was
is
my
not
understanding.
under math?
Yes.
Yep.
Can I do it
Yeah.
that way so it's a
Absolutely, so
separate
they can be
category?
bolded
Okay.
and,
Yep.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
There are a couple
Okay.
courses outside of math that will meet
Yes.
financial
Yep.
literacy, so that
Yep.
Yep.
allows that.
Okay.
So it's housed within math, but it's not necessarily a math class.
So if my planning constituent said, well, why is only 3.5? Well, here.
You have to
this
add
would
the
make
point-
it 4.
right.
But financial literacy is also met in this, and this class, so it gives flexibility. If
Yes.
If the student, like if somebody can't take AP Bio to get this,
They might be getting
they can
math
take
in their
it.
science class.
Yes,
this
yes,
time.
yes, yes.
Is that
Yep.
comfortable?
So
I-
what I'll do
Do you
is-
need time to think about it?
No, and we don't have,
You don't have time. I know. I meant like
I mean,
5 minutes to go
we
talk
don't want to
with
rush
people.
anything, don't get
Yes.
me wrong. But at the
Right.
same time, I think we're at a place where we've come to an understanding of what we need to do.
Okay.
And so I'll work with the graphic designer over email. I'll make sure that for your, well, I'll even get it to you guys so you can disseminate it early to be able to look at it.
And we
make
do have a
sure-
meeting with the full board on Wednesday that I would love to bring it to.
Oh, all right, let me get in touch with her first thing tomorrow morning
Sure.
and see if she can turn it around.
See if we can get
I
that for you.
actually think
Everybody
this-
will,
yeah,
should be,
I think even Pam would be okay with
Yeah.
this.
well, with the
Well, and if
math.
we have a unanimous recommendation, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have made a motion. Can I get a second?
Seconded.
Second by Sarah Sadowski. Any more discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Seeing none? It
All right,
passes.
unanimous
Thank you.
recommendation.
I'm not seeing anything else on the agenda this evening. I think we've done a lot of business here today, so I will call this meeting to, oh, could I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
To adjourn. Thank you. Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for coming. This meeting is adjourned.